What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Good to see you, gang. Happy Friday. Heading into the weekend with an interesting little 7-gamer on both sites. No late swap on DraftKings. The day is here. Everybody's been talking about it, dreading it, looking forward to it. I don't know. But we're finally here. Kind of a half measure on their part. They went no late swap, but they still only went 7 games, left the 2 10 o'clock games off the slate. Kind of interesting. I was kind of thinking that we'd have just all the games since there's no late swap. Why wouldn't you include those? Hopefully they'll get their act together with that going forward if they keep the no late swap in. But 7 games both sites makes it a little bit easier than what I was worrying about. But we've got a few key questionables that'll obviously have a big impact on that. So we're going to go through the slate as it looks like it is. Then we'll go through some of the possibilities. We'll talk about what rate changes, if Donovan Mitchell doesn't play, if Donovan Mitchell and Karis LeVert don't play. That has a big impact on guys like Darius Garland. So there's a lot of moving parts on the DraftKings side. And then obviously we'll be here updating everything at least through 8 o'clock because we've still got the FanDuel slate to deal with. Fun little sprint of a slate, 7 games all between 7 and 8 o'clock today. So that'll be fun. I always like the sprint slates. So it's weird. I enjoy when they're all compacted. We get through everything in a couple of hours and it's a nice run through. But I do think that they should have those late games on this slate. So it's little column A, little column B from me to start the show, I guess. Let's say hi to everybody. Cujo's here. First one in the door as usual. Hope you're ready for the no late swap as well, Cuj. We'll do the best we can as far as analyzing the slate with it. But yeah, should be a fun one. Po Degen's here. Po Degen looking for the hockey show, but he stumbled in here anyway. Appreciate it, buddy. Hope Colorado's doing well. Stephen Leibowitz is questionable today. Travis Wyndham. What's up, Trav? Po Degen and Anthony Taylor. Going to be a crazy slate. I agree with you there, bud. Trav, that was you. Yeah, Travis Wyndham took down looks like a little spring training slate today. $100 up top in a first place finish. Did that on his own, not anything that's not projecting spring training right now, but great to see people starting out with MLB, getting the ball rolling there, adding to the bankroll to get ready for the season. He got to first place also. I don't know how many people were in this tournament. Maybe Trav can fill us in, but he got in first place, took down $100 with 2 zeros in his lineup. Gotta love baseball. Looks like Keibert Ruiz, Carlos Santana, Eduardo Julian, Royce Lewis, C.J. Abrams, Max Kepler, Byron Buxton, Logan Thomas. So we went with a little bit of a Nats and twin stack with Carlos Santana on the twin. That's right. So a Nats and a twin stack took it down. Love it. Good to see. Congrats, Trav. So we'll get started. A few people trickling in. We've got our quorum, though. We already got our group of regulars. Take a slug of coffee, and I'll pull up the info, and we can dive into this thing. Happy Memphis Day for those celebrating. Really, really, really lousy game environment there. But probably 9 active players for Memphis today, and a big crunch up at the top of the board, as you can see. They're also the highest owned players. But we are sorted right now by our DraftKings win rate, and we've got 4 Memphis players at the very top of the board, which just makes things even more fun for this wacky slate. What do I have here? Is that a string? A little piece of fuzz. Yo, Trey's here. What's up, Trey? Travis says he got a couple practice swings. It was around 11 or 1,200 entries, $1.20 max. Made 3 lineups. That's awesome, dude. Great takedown. $100 on your $3, not bad at all. Trey's just getting back from the gym. I haven't seen Mamba yet, but I'm sure he'll be here. So let's start by talking. Game environments. I think that's a good place to jump off. Get to the latest and greatest lines here. 5, 6, 7. One of these is missing. Which game is not on here? They're updating one of them. All right, Charlotte, Philly. Philly favored by 11 at home. Still missing all their key pieces and parts that they have been, but should be able to handle their business against Charlotte. 214-point total in that one. Not great in terms of relative to the rest of the year. But on this slate, there are some low totals. That's not our lowest total of the day at 214. But we've just got all of that quality coming out of Memphis DFS salary-wise in a lower-end game that's kind of just pushing any values out of Charlotte, at least to the side a little bit. But that one's not as completely flat and dead maybe as it might otherwise seem on a different slate. Cavs and the Pistons. Cavs favored by 8.5 on the road in Detroit against the worst team in basketball. 221-point total there. As I mentioned, Donovan Mitchell currently questionable. Karis LeVert currently questionable. Could definitely create some wrinkles in that one. So that's one to watch. That game starts off early, though. That's a 7 o'clock start. So we'll have that news before the DraftKings slate locks. We'll probably have it around 6. With no Karis LeVert. We'll get into that later, actually. The key thing to look for is if there's no LeVert and no Mitchell, Darius Garland takes a big jump up to like 1.16 FanDuel points, 1.19 DraftKings points per minute. So that's a key piece there. And then you get the downstream, the trickle down to guys like Dean Wade pick up a few additional minutes. Guys like Sam Merrill pick up a few additional minutes. Max Strus, I'm not sure where I've got him right now. But there's a trickle down. But the key guy there, I think, is Darius Garland. So definitely one to watch in terms of the injuries. Moving on. Where's the pin? There it is. Dallas in Boston. Good game. Should be a fun one. Boston favored by 9, 237-point total. Pretty high-end game in terms of the total. It's the second highest on the board. 9-point spread. I like Dallas to keep it a little bit close. I don't think we're worried about blowout there. Boston might win by 9 by the end, but I don't think they win by 25. I don't think they win, a massive blowout. So I'm not really concerned about that. I think everybody's going to get pretty much their full run there. Just a healthy game environment with a lot of interesting pieces from fairly high-end players. Indy at New Orleans. That is, it's down here. New Orleans favored by 5 at home. 239-point total in that one. Pacey game for New Orleans. The highest total on the board at 239. Next highest is that 237 between Dallas and Boston. And then Golden State and Toronto, which I think is the game that's off the board right now. Yeah. Let me just make sure nothing changed there. Golden State at Toronto was the next highest one. Doesn't look like anything changed. Podziemski officially out. He was doubtful anyway. No major impact there. Get any other news here? Let's see. Saturday, Podziemski out Friday. If you're playing the late games, Koulibaly's out. Denny Avdi's out for Washington. That's not on this slate that we're talking about, though. All right, so getting back to that. So, yeah, Golden State, Toronto. When I put it into the sheet earlier, it was at Golden State favored by 3 on the road, 236-point total. Decent little game. A lot of pieces and parts from both sides that should at least be playable, and a pretty healthy total. Indy, New Orleans, I already talked about. Sacramento, Minnesota. Minnesota favored by 6.5 at home. 225-point total in that one. De'Aaron Fox questionable again. Minnie, obviously, strong defensive team. Has a little bit of an impact on the upside for Sacramento pretty much across the board right now. Not my favorite game environment, but we'll see where guys land. And then bringing up the bottom, the last game of the night, Portland at Memphis. Memphis currently favored by 1 with only 9 guys on available. 207.5 point, 207.5 in that one. So very, very low-end game environment. But going back to the board here, those top 4 guys are all from Memphis. Lamar Stevens is on Memphis. Jemison and G.G. Jackson are on Memphis. That's all their players today. They're all right here. So when we're talking about win rates, when we're talking about exposure, it's going to be a chalky Memphis day. Are all those guys going to succeed? Absolutely not. Are 3 of them going to succeed at price? Probably. 2 of them, almost certainly. So I do think you got to get there. The interesting part is outside of Jeremy Grant, who's lingering right here, there's a couple. There's Duop Reith is there. Kamara, Anthony Simons. But that low-end game, it's really just coming out of that Memphis side. The Portland guys aren't extreme priorities like the Memphis guys are. So that'll be interesting. 92 of the 102 nutrients the body needs. I don't know what you're talking about. Cannabis drinking vitamin water. Nice. Now I got it. Yeah, I'm with you, Alan. I think it's going to be a fun one. Definitely going to be interesting. It would be more fun and more interesting if they had included the 2 10 o'clock games. Also, it just, it keeps Giannis off the slate, not putting that one in. Just a little bit of a weird decision on their part. What are those last? Those last 2 games are Washington and the Clippers, so you've got a lot of potential value in that one, and then a bunch of good high-end players from the Clippers. You've got a fair amount of decent players on Chicago, and then you've got all the Bucks. Leaving those 2 games off, kind of dumb when you're running a no late swap. I don't really get that. But anyway, Mamba's here. There you go, Mamba. Trey was looking for you before. I'm sure you guys will connect. Let's talk the ins, the outs, the questionables, and so on. Right now, the only probable is Grant Williams. Unless anything's changed. I don't think it has. Questionables, KJ Martin, Kelly Oubre Jr., 2 biggies in Karis LeVert and Donovan Mitchell. Luka Doncic is questionable. I mostly expect Luka to play this game. I'd be pretty surprised if he sat this one. Obviously, if he's legitimately hurt, then maybe we don't get him. But I would lean toward Luka playing this one. We would definitely see an uptick for the obvious guys if Luka doesn't go. Kyrie most specifically. Chris Boucher, Aaron Nesmith, Moses Brown, G.G. Jackson, Darren Fox, and Anthony Edwards all questionable. Fox and Edwards, obviously, a couple big ones down toward the end. Nesmith, Boucher, the potential return of Moses Brown, G.G. Jackson. Obviously, there's some impact there on G.G. with Memphis. So we'll keep an eye on those. If we lose more Memphis guys, it just gets aggressively better. They might not have enough guys to fill out an NBA roster. I think they bottom out at 8, so they should be all right. But it's going to be just a really concentrated group of players getting a ton of minutes from Memphis either way. But if you don't get Mo Brown, you don't get Gigi, then it becomes even more concentrated. But Fox, Edwards, 2 really good players who potentially could come off the board and create a little bit of chaos. When we're looking at it, I pulled those ones up as well. No, I'll talk about it when we talk about the teams. And then out, LaMelo Ball, Nathan Mensah, Mark Williams, Robert Covington, Joel Embiid, Kenny Lofton Jr., D'Anthony Melton, Terquavian Smith, Brandon Podziemski is now officially out. We can change this, take away the doubtful. Andrew Wiggins, Dougie McBuckets, Dyson Daniels, DeAndre Ayton is doubtful. Malcolm Brogdon, Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp all out. Des Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., Luke Kennard doubtful. John Conchard doubtful. Scottie Pippen Jr., Derrick Rose, Marcus Smart, and Kyle Anderson is doubtful. A lot of moving parts on this one. I don't expect miracle performances or appearances from Kennard and Conchar. Obviously, if you got those guys, or one or the other, it changes the board a little bit. But I don't think we're getting either one of those guys. So I think we're all right there. Mama could have taken down first, but was scared of having 4 Spurs. Yeah, 4 Spurs is never, it's never really a great plan. Or rarely really a great plan. All right, so let's give this thing a look. I'm going to try and make this a bit snappy. I always say that, and we always end up going past 6, but I'd really like to punch out of this one before at or before 6 o'clock so that I can be Johnny on the spot with some updates if things change between 6 and 7 for the DraftKings folks and really try and nail this one. Looking at Memphis, I think it's a good starting point here. Vince Williams, Jordan Goodwin, Santi Aldama, G.G. Jackson, Zaire Williams, Lamar Stevens, Trey Jemison, Jake LaRavia, and Yuta Watanabe are the currently projected players. Not exactly a robust group, but again, just everybody standing up tall at the top of the board here. Lowest minutes projection on Memphis, currently Utah with 14. And again, obviously, if you get Kennard, if you get Conchar in there, they're both doubtful and really unlikely to play. They both missed the last couple of games. If you got either one of those guys in there, I think they would probably jump up the board pretty decently. I would have to examine what the minutes might look like. But there would definitely be some potential for those guys, and it would screw up all the value that we're already looking at. I don't think that's going to happen. But since they're not officially out yet, I do have to mention it at least. But yeah, we're dealing with a very, very, very chalky Jordan Goodwin at the top of the board. Vince Williams is pulling a ton. These guys are not only the top of the board when we're sorting by our win rate here, but when I look over at projected ownership, the top 3 guys are all from Memphis. Then Jeremy Grant is pulling a decent amount of ownership on the DraftKings slate. Then we go back to 3 more Memphis guys when we're just going down the line for ownership. So this is very much just in line with where the public's going to be. It's just playable chalk at this point, and it's where the value of the slate is coming from. And it's similar on FanDuel. That's weird. Top 4 of the top 6 names are from Memphis on FanDuel. It's a little bit more skewed, but the primary players at the top are the same. Jordan Goodwin, Vince Williams, Zaire Williams, and Santi Aldama are the top 4 Memphis guys on both sites. 4 of the top 6 on FanDuel, the top 4 on DraftKings. So talking about those guys, $4,700 Jordan Goodwin, the most highly owned player on both sites. We are ahead of the field. His win rate is ahead of the field. The win rate is on DraftKings is right about the field, but our sim told us to get significantly more than that. He landed in not all of the top 150, but a pretty healthy percentage at 94% against the 62.7% win rate. You're just riding good chalk there. At 4,700, he's been at 0.94 DraftKings points per minute for this season. His recent output, I should have had this up on the screen already. Jaron, this is going to be no Jaron, no Scotty. I think the rest then, no Conchar, and no Kennard. Good enough version of it, I think. For the season, it's only amounts to 42 minutes at this point with this scenario, so take it with a grain of salt. He's right about that same point per minute mark. Let's see if let me just leave those guys off. I'll give him back Jaren Jackson to work with. It's a big piece, obviously, that changes a lot, but I'm going to see if I can get more minutes here. It's the same. He goes up another 30 minutes or so, 0.95. Figure around a point per minute, that kind of territory. Plenty of time, and only 4,700. 6.94 points per dollar on DK. Just kind of making it happen. On FanDuel, 73% win rate, pushing almost 90% of the top 150. Just looks as close to a lock as we have right now. Vince, 45% win rate, but only owned 29% of the time on the FanDuel slate. He's pulling higher ownership than that. That puts us a handful of points below the field. Not crazy below. It's not saying fade him. It's not saying it requires a massive undercut. And his projected ownership on FanDuel is actually below that win rate. So you could grab a few more shares. You could go to the field. You could technically go a little above the field. But it looks like we're saying via the Sims that we want to be a little bit, couple few points below where the field is at. On DraftKings, we're pretty similar. Yeah, pretty similar in that he's actually, we're ahead of the field there. DraftKings were still ahead of the field on Vince. 42% of the top 150, 45% win rate. Both of those numbers are ahead of the field. About 10 points. The field's about 10 points below that win rate. So that puts us comfortably with a little bit of an edge on Vince. He's been at 0.90 per minute for the season. In the... Why did this reset? Jackson, Conshar, Kennard. These guys won't impact it that much. Let's call it a point per minute or so. 0.90 for the season for Vince. It's somewhere between 0.95 and a point per minute, depending on how close you can get to this actual scenario in Wowie. It's a good amount of upside. 6,100. It does put him on a different price tier than his teammates here. We got 47 for Goodwin. We've got 46 for Zaire and 49 for Santi. But he's powering through that. 5.96 points per dollar, 45% winner, 42.6% of the top 150. Williams, 30% winner on FanDuel, 45% of the top 150. That puts us well ahead of the field on Zaire on FanDuel. And then on DK, 38.5% winner, 36% of the top 150. It's just Memphis Day. Yeah, we're well ahead on Zaire as well on DraftKings. So Zaire, we're ahead on both sites. Santi, right about the field, couple points below the field. Field's like here, 29.7% win rate, with the field matching his win rate essentially on FanDuel. I have no issues if you wanted to get out to 29, 30% of them, but we're looking at a slight undercut at 25%. At a certain point, we do want to grab guys from other teams, not just go entirely Memphis. On DraftKings, we are... Oh, wait. I got this screwed up. DraftKings, Zaire... Santi is 30%. Too much back and forth. Again, we're right at the field. The win rate and the exposure in our top 150 for Santi Aldama, right around the field number. Just to knock it, let's just knock out the rest of the Grizzlies. Why don't I just do it this way? Just because they're all on the board. Right? It's not just those top four guys. You're getting the action from everybody. Lamar Stevens, 9.6 minutes the other night, 7.2 fantasy points. Did not come through for us. But I think we can go right back. Probably around 20 tonight, 17.6% win rate, 19% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 22.6 and 21% across the board on DraftKings. On DK, that gives us a... Hell is he? About 5-point advantage on the field in terms of exposure. At 4,100, power forward and center eligible. On Jemison, we're looking at more than the field again. Field's about here. We're up there. So there's good justification to just be at or above the field on pretty much all of these guys from Memphis. In terms of how many of them you want together in a lineup, it depends on what you're getting construction-wise. And what we're getting, what kind of exposure to the top end we're getting. I'm pulling up the Ace Mind page here because I did let it fly with 4. I would say primarily we do have 4s on the board in the top 150. The third lineup down is a 4 Memphis. Most of these are 3, couple with 2. I'd say the majority are either 3 Memphis or 2 Memphis on DraftKings, but 4 is definitely viable. FanDuel. same thing. I think maybe a few more fours. It probably breaks down about even if we look at the entire 150 versus 150 site to site. But at the very top of the board, I'm seeing a couple more Memphis fours on FanDuel than I was on DraftKings. There's a Golden State 4 at the top here. That's interesting. Jordan Goodwin, Tyrese Maxey, Mo Moody, Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga, Jason Tatum, Zion, Lamar Stevens, and Draymond Green. Four Golden State, 2 Memphis. That's a weird one. I don't finish third. I know you guys can't see this, by the way. I ran the FanDuel slate against the $3 10K to first today just to get a bigger pool. 39,000 entries in that one. Since the DK one is up over 100,000 entries for a $100K $4, I wanted to make them a little bit more comparable back and forth rather than using the 15,000 entry FanDuel one. Travis says, all right, if you get off track, I'm letting you know you're doing it for the people you can get out of here promptly one day this week. Hey, look, getting out of here promptly is kind of just so I can keep the stuff updated, you know? So it's not even for me. I am throwing one into the $4 on DraftKings just for the fun of it. So, again, basically, you're taking 2 to 4 of these Memphis guys in most of your lineups. When things radically change with a couple guys coming out of here, I'm sure the value board will change a little bit. Probably creates even more of an argument to consider like 3 Memphis guys. But yeah, I think we're viable at 4. 3's probably your magic number. The wrinkle is Vince. Just given that price difference that I was highlighting. 68 on FanDuel versus 53, 49, 55 for his key teammates up at the top of the board. And then, like I said before, 61 against 47, 46, and 49. Very, very different price points, but he's driving through that. Got him with the biggest minutes projection on the team. Got him up right around where he's been. 1.04 per minute. For where he's been for like the last 30 days for this situation, as close as we can approximate it. The game total has me a little bit hesitant to really endorse it. I mean, I don't want to say it that way. I am fully endorsing these Memphis plays, right? The Vince thing at price versus his teammates is where I get a little bit not even gun shy, not even. I just want to explain it right, I guess, is what I'm saying. And I'm sure you guys get it. But the low end game environment, his price being significantly above the other guys, no real guarantees that he's going to be a better option than, a similar point per minute Jordan Goodwin, a Santi Aldama, who for the season has been in the 0.94 range. There's no real guarantee that for the additional money you're getting more out of Vince there. He's just projecting that way, and I think it's correctly projecting that way. But just, if you're weighing, like, do I go with a $4,600 Zaire versus a $6,100 Vince Williams at the same positions on DraftKings? There's a fairly good argument to be made that Zaire is reasonably competitive in that spot, and you can see it on the board there. 45% winner versus 38.5% winner. 42% of the top 150 versus 36. Those are appreciable differences, but they're not gigantic differences. That falls within the range of probability for either one of those guys to beat out the other one. But given the savings, the $1,500 involved, that if you go Zaire there, you can get to a significant upgrade in a different spot. Alan Marga, Kyrie with Luka in. What's his optimal low? Not sure what you mean by what's his optimal. His projection, though. Got it projected with him in right now. Just a 5.5% winner on FanDuel, 4% of the top 150, just 3% winner, 0.67%. Just got Kyrie like once on DraftKings. Got him a little bit, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, a lot of moving parts on this one. I did a lot of like hypotheticals so I could be prepared. Got him at 118 today. So yeah, I took a tenth of a point off for the matchup. The model took a little bit. I took a little bit more. Typically, good defensive team with this kind of a line is a spot where I might get into it a little and try and put my thumb on the scale. And usually a tenth of a point is about what I'll adjust by if I'm going to do it. Kyrie will gain that back and more if Luka doesn't play. Luka, I've got at 1.63, which is, where's he at? 166. So it's taking just 0.03 of a point away from Luka on the FanDuel scale. It's taking more than that away from Luka for what he's been over the last month, though. He's in like the 1.7 range. So he takes, I think it was the same tenth of a point dip just for the matchup against Boston. But yeah, Kyrie becomes important with no Luka. I just expect Luka to go. But to give you the rate, let's see, no. All right, for the season, I don't want to export it. I just want to sort it. There we go. For the season, 179 minutes for Kyrie with no Luka, no Jaden Hardy, Dwight Powell, and Maxence Prosper all off the board. Just to approximate what we're looking at here. There's not enough minutes for any of these other guys who aren't on the board anymore or on the team anymore. Kyrie goes all the way up. And again, this would be adjusted somewhat down for the Boston defense. But he goes from the 118 that I've got him at right now, the 1.2 whatever for the season. He takes a leap up to 1.51 FanDuel points per minute. Same number on DraftKings. It's only over 179 minutes this season, 372 possessions. But that's a big jump. If Luka doesn't go, Kyrie becomes pretty important. You've got the Kyrie revenge, doesn't like Boston thing in there as well if you want to go to that. But I'm just looking at the numbers. The numbers would be strong for Kyrie Irving in that spot. Timmy Hardaway also takes a jump. 203 minutes in that scenario, 425 possessions this season. He jumps up to 0.95 FanDuel, 1.02 DraftKings, which is an aggressive leap from where he is right now. For the season, he's somewhere around 0.84, 0.85. I've got him at, again, a tenth of a point off of that per minute for tonight. But over the course of this season, that is a quarter of a point more. So Timmy becomes interesting. Where does Green go? Josh Green stays right around where he is. Oh, no, excuse me. I was looking at Timmy. Josh Green takes a jump. Actually, he would take a jump over where I've got him projected, but it would be kind of back to his season long. It's 0.73, 0.75 in 157 minutes in this scenario. So really, it would be Kyrie the primary beneficiary and the key player. And honestly, 9,300, 8,900, that would be very good pricing for Kyrie at that point. If I were to give him, whoops, don't want to do that. So if there was no Luka and I gave Kyrie his season-long rate for this situation minus the tenth of a point per minute that I'm knocking off for Boston, he would jump to right around 49 points on both sites. 49 fantasy points for 9,300, 49 for 8,900 on DraftKings. Prioritize if that's the situation. That said, again, I do expect Luka to go. Let me reset that so it doesn't come through. I don't want to accidentally project Kyrie like 10 points too high. There we go. To get that answer, Alan, as far as how much he would appear in the top 150, I would have to reset the whole thing, put the inputs into the sim tool like that, and then rerun the entire DraftKings sim. So it would take a longer time to get to that answer. He would definitely go up, though. Let's put it that way. Again, he was in just basically essentially a 0 with a 3% win rate. I'm gonna just guesstimate that this would jump over 10 in terms of the win rate, probably 15, somewhere even, maybe even better. And he would probably be in somewhere around that number. His numbers might end up looking around like what Luka's are currently, if we gave him that. Let's see. Is there an $8,900 guy at those positions? Probably not. 8,800 shooting guard, small forward, with a 47-point total. So Kyrie would have been 8,900 point guard. Here's Tyrese, 87 point guard with like 5 fewer points. He was coming through 12% of the time in winners and 32% of the time in the top 150. So now that I'm seeing that, actually, that might have a major, major impact. Especially if you get like Donovan Mitchell come off the board at that position. Yeah, that could get interesting really, really fast. This might be a reasonable comp. I know it's shooting guard, small forward, but 8,800, just point and a half shy of where Kyrie would probably land. Anthony Edwards landed in 20% of the winners and 18% of the top 150. I think that would create a really interesting scenario if he didn't go. Golden State, somebody was asking about. Kind of bouncing around today. I think it's justifiable. That's what the Dubs are looking like. No Podziemski. A little bit of down, trickle down in terms of the minutes. Usual suspects just getting their regular 33, 32, 30, 28. Mo Moody up to 26. Chris Paul getting a couple more at 26. Although he went 25 and changed the other night. So right about normal. Jump for Gary Payton. And then just some downboard action. Quinones gets on the board for a couple minutes. Not that he's relevant. But you do have some relevant options. $3,300 Gary Payton on DraftKings certainly looks good. Nearly a 15% win rate. 20% of the top 150. Just a value piece for sure. Very, very price driven, but 0.90 per minute on the season. Reasonable enough. And then kind of an is who he is situation for Draymond at 63, but he's relevant. Clay at 58, 21.8% winner, 24% of the top 150. I got to assume we're going to get 30 plus out of Clay in this situation, but he has not been getting a ton of minutes. He's fallen out of favor in Golden State. 27, 27, 31, 21, 28. I'm banking on like this kind of a day. Not that it's a huge, huge difference. But no Wiggins, no Podziemski. I mean, they're just going to be out of options to fill that spot. So I think Clay gets his 30 plus. Disagree with you, Mark. Mark's saying no late swap will not attract more DFS players. It'll piss everyone off when players from late games get ruled out. Everybody's going to be in the same boat, and everybody knows they're going into that situation. I think it's got appeal for the public who stay away a lot from NBA because of the requirement to just sit here all night to actually watch the games and so on. But it's also interesting the way that they set it up, which I think is even more to the point, Mark, is DraftKings didn't include those 10 o'clock games. We're basically going to know very much of what this slate looks like. Everything's between 7 and 8 o'clock starts. So we're going to have most of it anyway. People will get burnt, no doubt about it. But they'll get burnt the same way that... click to the wrong tab. They'll get burnt the same way that everybody else who had that play got burnt, rather than, everybody was able to pivot off of it, but I was out for dinner and then I got burnt. I think that's what pisses people off more. If everybody books that same 0, I don't think it's as big a deal. Could be wrong. Totally willing to be wrong. This is not nowhere near a scenario where I've got the answer and I think you don't. Just a matter of opinion. But I think it's actually an interesting experiment. I'm curious to see how it goes. I wish they had included those later games, like I was saying at the top of the show. Looks like Schmancy Schmabs is slow on their ownership. I don't think Poku's active. Pretty sure he was inactive. I'll double check. I know I registered him as I was going through the slate. Where the fuck is he? Yeah, they've got him listed out with the G League. So, yeah, some interesting parts from Golden State. Clay on FanDuel, concerningly high. 42% winner, 58% of the top 150. Looking like a really key piece over there for only 5,400. He's 58 on DraftKings. That's a very different price across sites. Shooting guard only, but doesn't really matter. It's been at 0.87 per minute on the season, 26 minutes the other night, just 20 FanDuel points. It is certainly not the Klay Thompson of old. That's for damn sure. Still taking 8 threes a game, though, making 37% of them. 56.2% true shooting, a 10.5% assist rate, 5.6% rebounding rate. You know, you get the right night where he makes 5 of these, 6 of these. It boosts you a little bit. You know, he's certainly not shy. It's just he's a bit of a downturn, but it's priced in. Even on DraftKings at 58. You know, go back 2 years. Clay for 58 would have been a pretty interesting piece. I think he works. Assuming the minutes, I think he works. Kuminga on FanDuel, yes. On DraftKings, meh. 6,400 versus 6,600. He's got dual position eligibility on the FanDuel slate, not on the DraftKings board. He's playable on DK, but we got him less than his win rate, probably less than where the field is. Yeah, we're well below the field there. Field in the low double digits, about 4 times that. So we're undercutting a little bit on Kuminga on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we're getting him like 16%, which is... That's weird. Maybe RG and Labs are doing something together, Trey. RG only has half of the ownership projected for the Warriors. Ah, there they go. All right, I reloaded it and it popped in. Our number on Clay is definitely ahead of the field on FanDuel, but he's very popular on the FanDuel slate in the ownership that I'm using here. And then Kuminga, who is the one I was talking about, we're right around the field on Kuminga on FanDuel. Looks like a decent option. Basically a 20% win rate. Get around the field at about 16, 17%. Draymond, we're like dead on the field on FanDuel. Probably the same on DraftKings. Yeah, right about the field. 10-ish, 12-ish% across the board for Draymond. Mo Moody's been getting starters run. Went 25-6 the other night, or getting starts, I should say, not starters run necessarily, still playing in the mid-20s. 25-6 the other night, put up 20 fantasy points. 0.88 per minute, 17.5% usage. Probably a little better on FanDuel, 3,900. 23.1% winner, 35% of our top 150 on DraftKings, just 12% winner, 7% of the top 150 for 4,000 shooting guard, small forward. That's right in line with his DK ownership. FanDuel, we're higher. Getting a little bit more of them on the FanDuel slate. Not quite double, but a solid like 10, 15 points on top. Chris Paul doesn't look all that relevant on FanDuel, a little bit playable on DraftKings. Peyton, again, on DraftKings, looks like a interesting piece. If you were going to forego one of those Memphis guys, dropping down in price to a $3,300 Gary Payton to slot into, in one lineup, in a few lineups, definitely a viable option. I say one lineup if you're building like 5. If you're building 150, You can get up to like 20% of them if you want them. Mark K, who's got the big bankroll the Sharks do? They will be more willing to take risks on questionable players. The regular DFS players will lose out, so advantage to the Sharks. No, gonna disagree with you, Mark. Advantage to the Sharks was when the Sharks could sit there all night, pivot around all the positions that the public is taking. Sharks are gonna be locked into those same plays too. It's all gonna be speculative. It's all gonna be people, making guesses at who's gonna play and who's gonna not. I actually think it would lead to a situation where the Sharps might outsmart themselves a few times trying to do that, where the public might be... I agree that the public will probably be a little bit more conservative about it. It'll also depend on where everybody's getting their projections from, getting their numbers and their expectations from. What I was saying yesterday, where I think it'll be really interesting, is it's going to create just a more diverse board, right? Like, let's say I decided, all right, Luka isn't going to play tonight. And I put projections up, and let's say that I was Stochastic, right? Let's say Stochastic did that. A place that has a bunch of users, a bunch of people who take their projections. Let's say Stochastic said, all right, Luka's off the board. We don't think he's going to play. We're going to project Kyrie here. And then RG, RunPure, all these other guys don't do that. That's going to create two dramatically different slates from site to site. So all the users from this site are going to be up in this kind of a position, in this kind of a lane, and all the other guys from other sites. So it's going to be multiple lanes of travel, where right now everybody's kind of just in the same lanes, and you're just looking at a difference of, Stochastic's got somebody 2 points higher than RunPure does. I've got him, 3 points higher than RG does. But it really narrows the focus, and that's why you get so much chalk, and that's why you get some of these guys owned in the 70-80% range. The public has gotten really, really sharp based on some of these tools, based on some of the sims that are available and everything, and then just the abundance of sites providing projections. So the public's been really sharp. I think, if anything, it dulls the edge a little bit for everybody. And if you're dulling the edge for everybody, I think that favors John Q. Public more than it favors the Sharps. Again, totally willing to be wrong. We will see. Trey's thinking going to see lower ownership across all guys. Trey's saying, helps a casual fan and people like me. I only play a few lineups and don't always sit at my CPU all night. And that's actually an apt point as well. It might have the biggest benefit for guys like that. Guys who are playing 20 lineups in a 150. You can position, but you're not taking a giant bankroll angle. Beyond the rabbit hole, my target Gary Trent on Toronto. Let's just jump. I guess through no plan, we've been going a little bit team by team today, so we can keep that trend alive. Trent looking a little bit more playable on the FanDuel slate. 8.2% winner, 4.6% of your top 150. On DraftKings, he didn't get into the top 150. He did come up in 2% of the time in winning lineups. There's a little bit there. Let's see what is... That puts us way below the field. It's relative. 0 is way below everything. He's owned 8 to 10%. Didn't mean to say the number. So he's owned a little bit on DraftKings. Didn't really come through our sim all that strong. 0.75 per minute, 0.72 per minute. A lot of games like this. 32, 33 minutes, 18, 20 fantasy points. There's other pieces I think are better options from the Toronto side. Scotty Barnes is one. RJ Barrett is one. Quickly a little bit. 5% winner, but just very few of the top 150 for 7,200. Jakob Poeltl looking a little interesting. Nobody else really after that. Dropped off on DK. On FanDuel, you get a little bit of Trent. Very minor interest in Olynyk. IQ does look better on the FanDuel slate. Poeltl looks better on the DraftKings slate. And then bear with me one sec. Just pulling something up on the stats page. Team. I love how many options are available on all these things, but it makes it harder and harder to get to what you want sometimes. I can't do advanced stats and sort by team. That's not right. That can't be. There we go. Mo Moody, 110.2 defensive rating. And then you got Glove Jr. at 105.7. If defensive rating is what you were looking for with that question. I am the KY. It makes me like the single and 3 max with more dead lineups smashing all those tonight. I think that's a good approach. Yeah, single entries, 3 maxes, 20s. Definitely think that's a good approach. So yeah, in general, Golden State, a pretty decent defensive team. So, yeah, I don't love the Gary Trent spot. Going back to that question, I like some of these other guys a little bit better. But again, if you're playing it on FanDuel, you've got a little bit more to work with. If you're playing it on DraftKings, we're about a quarter of the projected ownership in our win rate, and we didn't get them at all in the top 150 at 4,700. Let me just start chopping away at some of these teams. Tatum, one of the highest projected overall scorers on the board. I think second highest in my projections behind Luka. Second or third. Looks very strong. 31% win rate on FanDuel, 38% of the top 150 on DraftKings, 23%. Only got to him 16% of the time on DK, though. Let's look at the projected ownership there. Couple of points below the field on Tatum on DraftKings in that sim. But the win rate is a couple points higher than his projected ownership. So if you wanted to take Tatum out to about this win rate, call it 25%, I think you're perfectly fine. Sim is telling us be more in the 15% range. But since we can crack the public's ownership with that win rate, I don't mind getting a few extra shares. And again, it's just one of the higher raw ceilings on the board, one of the higher raw projections on the board, 1.35 DraftKings points per minute for the season, and you're only getting them at 9,800. Jason Tatum is a 10K plus player. That's a little silly in that price point. Both sides have him below 10. Zinger, playable on both. Looks better on DraftKings at 74, though. 1.24 per minute on the season. He's been higher than that over the past month or so. He's been in the 1.4 territory. I've got him kind of in between those two marks today. Power forward and center for 74. 15% winner, 14% of the top 150 on DraftKings. That puts us a couple points ahead of the projected ownership on DK. On FanDuel, we're not really there. He's got a better win rate than what our exposure looks like, though. The win rate is right around the public's exposure, and we're cutting that like in half. I think that's probably the right spot to be on Zinger. A couple additional shares wouldn't kill you, though. If you took him from 4.5% to 8%, somewhere around there, wouldn't kill you. Jalen, decent 12% win rate on both sites. Just 4% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 7% of the top 150 on DraftKings. That's going to be below the field on both sites. He's not popular. He's into the double digits, but not very aggressively so, above 10 in terms of public exposure. But we're settling about a little less than half of the field's projection there. 81, he's just priced kind of correctly. 81, 76 across sites. Nobody else. Drew Holiday on DK at 5,900 is interesting. 1,000 less than he is on FanDuel, where he didn't hit the board really at all. Just under a 10% win rate, 7% of the top 150. That puts us right around the field on Drew. And then really nobody else. Kind of just the starters, the core rotation guys from Boston right now. Charlotte looks overall more playable on DraftKings, but the high point comes from Cody Martin on FanDuel again. Played nearly 29 minutes the other night, gave us 19 fantasy points. He's a 0.8 per minute player, 15.7% usage rate. He comes with all the warnings and asterisks and whatnot that these low usage, low output types do. But at price at 52, shooting guard, point guard, positional and price, it is working a little bit on the FanDuel slate. On DraftKings, he's an afterthought, 6.9%. He's playable, but he's total non-priority over there. Top of the board on DK, Brandon Miller for 66, 10% winner. Got to him 22% of the time. It's intriguing. All right. That's like 3x on DK for Brandon Miller. He's projected to be owned below that win rate. We got to him a decent clip here. Shooting guard, small forward, 6,600. It's been a 0.89 for the season. I can just pull up what I did with him in the other sheet. It was 0.89 for the season. I've got him 0.96, which is more in line with last 30 days or so. Just call it February 1. Oh, that was March 1. It's been 1.01 FanDuel, 1.02 DraftKings over since February 1st. So Miller looks interesting on DK and definitely looking like we're going to get above the field on him on DK. On FanDuel, just low single digits, not really interesting on FanDuel. And nobody else really except for Cody Martin is coming up over there. $4,400 Grant Williams hitting the board a little bit, 5.6% winner, but less than the field on that. And then just low single digits for everybody else. Nick Richards on a minor option. You're right down there, Joker. What are you doing? It's under the desk. His cousin Eddie said in Christmas Vacation, don't worry about him. He's just hacking on a bone. And then you hear the dog puke under the table. Yep, he's got it up. That's what we're dealing with from Joker under the table right now. Alan Market, yeah, Glove Jr., aka the Mitten. Trey had Gary Payton sneakers when he was 8 or 9 years old. That's pretty badass. Who was Gary Payton's shoe company? I don't actually remember. Remember Sean Kemp? I don't know why that popped into my head necessarily. I guess Gary Payton. Sean Kemp was amazing. The word was that he couldn't palm a basketball. You dunk like that and not be able to palm the basketball. It's just, that's incredible. So yeah, nobody else from Charlotte really landing with all that much relevance right now. Cleveland side, all right, so we talked about this at the top, but let's reiterate. If we lose this guy, which we might, this guy goes way up. Or goes up decently. If we lose both of these guys, that's the key. That's where Darius Garland just shoots through the roof. Darius Garland for the season, 0.96, 1.0. If we get no Karis LeVert, but Donovan Mitchell plays, Garland goes from those numbers to 1.03 on FanDuel, 1.04 on DraftKings. If we get Karis LeVert in, but Donovan Mitchell out, Darius Garland goes a little higher on DK, 1.07, stays around the 1.01 on FanDuel. But if we get both of them out, over 218 minutes this season, 448 possessions, Darius Garland jumps all the way to 1.16, 1.19. It's not quite Kyrie territory, but it's a pretty big jump. So that's the guy to keep your eye on if you get no Mitchell, no LeVert. This is run with everybody as they are. Garland hit 5.9% of the time in winners, but didn't land in the top 150 on FanDuel. 2.8% of the time, we got him a few times in the top 150 on DraftKings. This would change pretty drastically. He's only 7,000 on FanDuel. He's only 68 on DraftKings. If I gave him an additional, plus 0.2 of a point per minute, he's going to go up. Let's see if I can approximate that real quick. Well, nothing that I do on this show is real quick, but you get me. So let's see, 0.9, I got to take all that away. And then probably 4, 5, 5.5. 5.5 probably gets us there. And it's against Detroit. You could arguably give him a little bit more. The jump would be 8 or 9 fantasy points at least. He'd be in like the 40-point projected range. 41 and change on DraftKings. At those prices, that would prioritize Darius Garland. Kind of rooting for that situation, honestly. As is, Spida looks okay, 11.1% winner, 8.6% of the top 150 on DraftKings. He's 11.7, but only 3% of your top 150. Levert is the guy who actually, if he plays and everybody's there, looks kind of interesting. 6,100 small forward shooting guard, 21% of the top 150 on FanDuel. 21% winner, 18% of the top 150 FanDuel, 27-28 on DraftKings. In a regular situation at these prices, Levert is actually looking pretty decent. If we get the situation with no Donovan Mitchell, but Levert plays, he goes from 1.02, 1.04 to he stays about the same. So Levert's going to be just look like this regardless of scenario. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. He'll probably pick up a few minutes. I'd probably land him at 32 as opposed to 28 minutes in that scenario. So he would pick up a little bit, but it wouldn't be entirely rate-based. It would be more minutes and expectation-based. And if he's banged up and if they're lighting up Detroit, I could see him still just playing 28. So let's call Levert if he goes just kind of this scenario where he's highly playable on both sides. The priority, again, is Darius Garland in that situation. In the double no Levert, no Mitchell situation, Mobley stays 1.18, 1.20, Jared Allen 1.17 across the board. So those are almost exactly where those two guys are. And then, like I said at the top, we would find maybe a couple additional minutes here, a couple additional minutes here. And what's his face would probably drop onto the board. Craig Porter. I think he's active. I don't think with a big amount of minutes, but I think you'd get something. So that's the Cavs. Pretty much up and down. Dallas, we talked about briefly. Right now, it's really just a minorly playable. Well, I shouldn't say that, actually. Luka, nearly 15% of the top 150 on FanDuel. That's kind of interesting. 12-6. A lot of ways to get there. Does look like he got exposed as one of the higher end players of the day. And same story on DraftKings, actually, 12.6%. So we're getting our Luka shares. It's against a 6% win rate on FanDuel, 8% win rate on DraftKings. It's a diminished. It's a Luka against a really good defense. So like I talked about, I'm taking down his, everybody on this team by about 1/10 of a point, crediting that. But still looks pretty decent. And those win rates could arguably be a little bit higher. And we know he's got, mid-80s to 100-point upside on the right day. If he's out there, he's definitely playable. He's the top priority on Dallas. And one of the more high-priority stars, I'm going to have to guess that at price, that's the highest-owned star. And then Kyrie just looks minorly playable right now, but if Luka doesn't go, he becomes a priority. Everybody else, meh. Nothing, really. Cade. A lot of action for Cade on FanDuel. 8,100, 1.14 points per minute on the season, 29% usage. Not the best matchup in the world for them. And that one's looks like they're getting a line update in that one too. Earlier, that one was at 221 in terms of the game total, and they're 8.5-point underdogs. But if we're pulling anybody out of the Detroit side of that one, I think it's Cade. 8.6% winner on DraftKings, just 2% of the top 150. He's way more interesting at price on FanDuel. 81 FanDuel versus 79 DraftKings. That's obviously a big, big difference. And then nobody else really landed from the Detroit side. A little bit maybe of justification for a share or two of Jalen Duren, but he didn't land in any of our top 150. We actually got more Quentin Grimes with a 2% win rate. He's only 3,800. Jalen Duren at 6,900, 5% winner, but didn't get him. Just more valuable centers on the board. Nobody else really came up. 1% of Isaiah Stewart on FanDuel. Golden State we've done already. Indy, Neesmith, looking like the only really interesting guy. You can take your Miles Turner shares, 3.4% winner. We got to him a little bit more than that. Not really so much on DraftKings. Halliburton falls into that tier of guys that's, despite a 2.3% win rate, just 0.67% exposure in our top 150. He's a 1.45 per minute player for the season. 1.48 on DraftKings. If you've got the 96 and you've got the open point guard spot, I have no issues with plugging Tyrese Halliburton in for a few more shares than this. If you wanted to take 5% of Tyrese against his 2.3% win rate, it's just that pay up spot. So it's, those are the luxury items, the ones that I'm always trying to explain, not explain my way around, because that seems like I don't agree with the numbers here. But hopefully you guys get what I mean. I think you do. When I talk about those like high-end luxury guys. He's definitely on that list. But we got way more Luka for 3,000 more, essentially. Tickle in my throat. Air Zooms with a Peyton shoe. 98. It was 10 or 11. Oh, you dropped the pick? Nice. Oh, those are cool. I like those. Did I skip over Struce? He's in there. Right now he's at 30 minutes, 5,900, 1.06, 0%, 3.58, 0.67. But yeah, to put a point on that, if you get him with no Levert or Mitchell, he goes up by about a tenth of a point per minute. 0.96 on DraftKings, 0.92 on FanDuel versus 0.85, 0.82. So yeah, a little bit more room for sure for Max Strus if you get that no Levert, no Mitchell situation. Pick up a couple of minutes, and he'll pick up a decent little uptick in his fantasy points. So good call there. Appreciate that. Who was I messing with before? I just remembered I got to correct. I think it's Darius Garland here. Oh, shit. All right, hang on. Yeah, that's where I was. Okay. When I change these things in the background projection sheet, I got to remember to reset them. Otherwise, they'll get uploaded to the site that way, and then we'll be all over the place. 538. So Indy-wise, Naismith hitting the board a little at 48, both forward spots. Nobody really on DraftKings. Outside of your take what you want shares of Tyrese. TJ McConnell at 3.8% winner, 2.6% of the top 150. You could throw in a few shares of TJ, but not looking like a absolute priority by any means. Who was questionable? Neesmith was the one that was questionable too. So if you drop him out of there, that could get a little interesting. With no Neesmith since February 1, we get, let's see. I want this scroll. That's so annoying. And McConnell's gone 165 minutes, 354 possessions, 129, 128. Stays about the same. Picks up a couple hundredths of a point. Matherin, Nembhard, where are they? Matherin goes to 0.99 DK, 0.95 FanDuel. So he takes a bit of an uptick in that situation and would probably see a couple of additional minutes. Nembhard, 0.70, 0.69 over 177 minutes in the last month. Actually, a little bit of a downtick for him. Ben Shepherd has been at 0.79 across sites in 133 minutes. Obi goes to 0.93, 0.92, right around where he's been, but we'll probably see, it'd probably be more minutes based for some of these guys if you get no Neesmith rather than rates. I don't think the rates change all that much, but there would just be a distribution and new allocation of how those minutes are hitting the board. I don't know that it makes anybody super relevant. I don't know that anybody even reaches that level. Memphis, we've done mini. If you get no Anthony Edwards, that's another situation. All right, with no Anthony Edwards, these are some of the ones that I did before the show. Those Cavs ones, I pulled this one up before the show. For the season, starting with the star tier, 492 minutes for Cat, 1,023 possessions, 1.29 FanDuel, and 1.35 DraftKings. So Cat bumps up by a little bit more than a tenth of a point per minute. Gobert, 472 minutes, 969 possessions. These are for the full season, by the way. 1.07 DraftKings, 1.11 FanDuel. Keeps him right around his season-long production. Actually, literally exactly his season-long production. Slow-mo's out, so we don't have him. Conley, 0.95 DraftKings, 0.93 FanDuel. Minor uptick for Conley. Monte Morris, very small sample, right around the numbers he's had. Alexander Walker goes to 0.78 across the board. Minor uptick for him, but would have more minutes available. McDaniels and McLaughlin. McLaughlin goes 0.82, 0.86. Little downgrade. I don't know that I would take it away from him necessarily. Not that he's got a lot of minutes available right now, but he would jump into, I don't know, teens minutes. I'll check it. And then McDaniels, like the bottom of the board here, 0.57 across the board for Jaden McDaniels. So he actually takes a minor dip in that situation too. Let's just hope Anthony Edwards plays. In that scenario, Edwards looks decent, playable on both sides, better on DraftKings, 20% winner, 18% of the top 150, 12% and 10% on FanDuel. Cat is playable, but he's under his win rate in terms of our exposure right now. I suspect that puts us below the field. I mean, if they were projecting ownership for it, I'd be able to tell you. Weird. Trey, I don't know, man. The RG is doing a lot of the same things as Labs is with the not projecting ownership for some of these teams. It's weird. Now it popped in. And FanDuel. Yeah, so right now we're coming up a little bit lower win rate than his public projected ownership and significantly lower exposure in our top 150 against his public ownership on both sides for Karl Anthony Towns. If Edwards doesn't play, I think it becomes more justifiable to just take a share of Cat around what the field is. He's currently mid-teens projected ownership, a little higher than the win rates. I would say it probably jumps to 20s, somewhere in there, and I think it would be justifiable to take mid-teens, 20s, instead of just like mid-single digits ownership share on Cat in that situation. Alexander Walker becomes a little bit more interesting, 4,800 on FanDuel, 39 on DraftKings. That's probably where he gets a little bit more. 8.6% winner, 2% of the top 150 right now. But if you threw him more time, that would go up. Even a 0.72 per minute, what did I say it goes to? Like 0.76 or something like that. Even at those levels, at 3,900, we'll probably get a little bit of life there. Nolans. Zion looking good again. 29% winner. Holy shit, 65% of the top 150. Yeesh. That's a big meatball. That is about 3x the public projected ownership on Zion on FanDuel. DraftKings, we're about double. $29.3% winner on FanDuel, 23.2% winner on DraftKings, 1.25 DK points, 1.24 FanDuel points per minute. High-end game environment going up against Indy, picking up pace, picking up possessions. This is a +4, I want to say, possession spot for them. Yeah, +4 on my possessions board. 239 points is the highest total. It's a reasonably close 5-point spread. 122-point implied total for them. That's the second highest implied team total on the board behind the Celtics at 123. If I sound like I'm trying to justify getting this much Zion, I'm completely doing that. I like the idea of the 30% win rate, 23 on DraftKings. I like the idea of getting ahead of the field. I don't know if I need to have 65% of Zion in this spot. I don't know that he's that good a play. I do think he's a good option today. I think Brandon Ingram's a good option today. Herb Jones is looking like a decent option. CJ's on the board a little bit, but 65% of Zion is a lot on FanDuel. 45% on DraftKings. If I was 45% on FanDuel, give me back 20 points of the Zion exposure. I can still be well ahead of the field. I think that's probably around what I would want. This seems a little aggressive. Yeah, I do think there's probably a lot of hesitation, a lot of trying to figure things out for the ownership projections today, Trey. I do agree with you. Beyond the Rabbit Hole loves the non-late swap. I'm with you, at least on this side of it. I think it's interesting. I think it's good for the ecosystem. We will see. If people abandon it in droves, I'll obviously be the first one to tell you guys that I was wrong. Outside of Zion, like I said, Brandon Ingram for sure. 16% winner on FanDuel, got to him around 22%. I'm comfy enough with that. 12.6% winner, 36% of your top 150 on DraftKings. I'm fairly comfortable with that as well. It's probably a little bit high in terms of the exposure versus where the public is. Actually, it's really high. You could take less of Ingram if you wanted to. But good justification for getting a decent chunk of them. 12% winner, 36% of the top 150. That's 36% against projected mid-single digits ownership. The projected ownership is about half that win rate. That said, I do have him projected several points higher than the site I'm looking at, where I'm getting that ownership from. I think they're low on most of the Pellies today in their projections, just given this game environment. So I could see taking a few additional shares, a decent chunk, call it maybe 20. 20 gives you like 4x on the public. 36 gives you a lot. I like him. I think he's a little bit more in line with Reason on the FanDuel slate, but they both look like good plays. Zion and Brandon Ingram both look like good plays, and it's a very healthy game environment. Herb Jones at 57, 0.84 per minute, just a 14.6% usage rate. Comes with this warning all the time. Almost 39 minutes, 23.3 FanDuel points. Not going to get you there at 5,700. A little bit of additional upside, a little bit of more expectation than that, obviously, based on the season-long numbers. But 14% winner. The price is okay at 57. 21% of the top 150. Maybe a little aggressive. At 57 on DraftKings, he's not a factor. 1.4% winner, landing in one of the top 150. Nobody else really down the board. I was a little concerned about the exposures to the Pellies on FanDuel. Not concerned, but like in a true 150 lineups, I don't know that my 150, if you looked at it against these numbers, would necessarily represent those three. It would probably be more like 40. 20 I'm all right with on Ingram. This would probably be more like 40, 45. And this would probably be more like that win rate at 14, 15, just shave a few off of it. And that would still put you double the field on Herb. Philly obviously still missing a bunch of pieces. No Covington, no Embiid, no Melton, no Terquavian Smith, no Kenny Lofton Jr. Tyrese still at the top of the board, 26% exposure on FanDuel, 32% exposure to him on DraftKings, 12% winner on DraftKings, 8% winner on FanDuel. Philly, even with their missing pieces, should handle their business against their Charlotte team. Kelly Oubre is questionable. If his 30 minutes drop back into the pool, we probably see an uptick. KJ Martin's also questionable. I would imagine that would land around some Nick Batum with some more minutes. Maybe a few additional minutes for Buddy that would make Buddy look a little bit better. 16% winner right now, 12.6% exposure in the top 150. Just 5% winner, 3% exposure in the top 150 on DraftKings. DK right now, the two keys are the obvious guys, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris. Those are the two playable guys on DK right now. If you lost Oubre, if you lost KJ Martin, some of these other guys would pick up a little bit of value. Neither center looks all that great. Paul Reed, Mo Bamba, kind of low end right now. Lowry, I don't think would pick up anything beyond what he's already at, and he doesn't look all that relevant. So I think it would probably just be downboard expectations. Like Batum would get some. Campaign maybe would get some, and then Ricky Council would probably get some. So just like these last three guys. That is a lot of minutes, though, if both Oubre and KJ don't go. So I don't know that it all piles into here. You'll probably see a couple additional minutes for some of those guys. This game's messy. Mo Brown may be back tonight. I haven't seen him in quite a while. Doesn't look really relevant on either site. He's very cheap. Dead min on FanDuel, 39 on DraftKings. But I don't really see much expectation of him playing many minutes if he takes the court at all. When was the last time Mo Brown even played? Mo's been out since the New Year. This would be his first game in 2024. Oh, no, second game. Excuse me. He played on New Year's Day. So this would be his second game in 2024. Hasn't played a ton all season. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games with the team all season. Doo-Wop Reef looking pretty relevant. 9.8% winner on FanDuel. 14% of the top 150. Just 4,800. 12.8% and 16% exposure in the top 150 for 42 on the DraftKings slate. Kind of relevant over there. It's about where he is publicly. I think you just take him about in line with the field, but looks like a decent enough piece of value. 1.01 DraftKings points per minute for the season. No Ayton. So there's a little bit of an uptick there. Jeremy Grant, 20% winner, 13% of your top 150 on FanDuel, 18% winner, 8.6% of the top 150 on DraftKings. If I'm taking anybody from this game, it's probably Jeremy Grant. Just given where those numbers are. I just don't love this Portland side of this low-end game. The Memphis side, obviously, you're taking 3 or 4 Memphis guys. The Portland side, I don't know. I don't love it. Simons is all right, 20% winner, 12% of the top 150. So maybe it's just, him or him, and probably not two. Like if I'm hand building that, I think that's the way I would approach the Portland side of this. I want one of these guys, maybe. If I'm taking anybody, I want one of Jeremy Grant or Simons. Maybe you could work like a wreath in there around the edges. Kamara, sub 10% and only got to him 3% of the time on FanDuel. Just over 10%, got to him at 7% on DraftKings. He's owned. That's about half the public projected ownership on DK. Don't necessarily love that spot either. 0.73 per minute on the season, 13.7% usage rate. Did give us 30 FanDuel points in 32 the other night. At price, that would work. What do I have him at today? I've got him a little higher today, 0.78. Giving him a few points on top. Not my favorite option. Portland in general, not my favorite option here. Sacto, if you get no Fox. We've seen this a few times recently. Sabonis, a little bit of a dip for the season. 135 DK, 131 FanDuel, as opposed to the 141 DK, 138 FanDuel that he's at for the season under normal circumstances. Malik Monk, 121 DK. And, or excuse me, 1.27 DK, 1.21 FanDuel. So Malik Monk takes a nice rate jump in the no De'Aaron Fox situation. Would also see more minutes. Keegan Murray goes 0.86 FanDuel up to 0.92. Same thing on DK up to 0.92. A little bit of an uptick there. Kevin Huerter, 0.91 DK, 0.88 FanDuel. Little minor uptick for Kevin Huerter in that situation. Davion Mitchell got the start the other day for the season in 558 minutes, 1,147 possessions in this situation. He's been almost exactly at these 0.6-ish type numbers. Played 15 minutes, 12.7 FanDuel points the other night in a start. Probably not a great option. I like the Malik Monk spot if we get no Fox. If Fox does play, didn't really hit the board on FanDuel, but he's relevant on DK, 11.4% winner, 6% of the top 150. Reasonable enough. Harrison Barnes stays in that general territory. Minor uptick. Low 0.7s for Harrison Barnes if Fox doesn't go. Mitchell and LeVert are both out. That's news. So that's Darius Garland Day. If that is the case. Brendan Miller out. Donovan Mitchell and Karis LeVert both out. Seth Curry will start for Brendan Miller. That's a weird little curveball. Oubre game time decision. Grant Williams off the injury report. And that's all the news that's come out over the last little bit. But that's a pretty good segue. Coming up on 5:59. We've talked through Sacramento. Pretty sure we talked about Toronto, but just to put it on the screen here real quick for you guys. Scotty Barnes, top of the board, 22.8%, 28% of the top 150 FanDuel. About 15, 16% across the board on DraftKings. Definitely looks playable. 95, 93. I'm not sure he's my favorite option out of that price tier, but it definitely looks good. It is a good defensive Golden State team like we've talked about, but Scotty is the lead option on this Toronto team right now. That said, his points per dollar difference is more stark on FanDuel. 5.01 points per dollar on FanDuel versus RJ at 4.8, IQ at 4.5. On DraftKings, you got 5.15, 5.16 for RJ. IQ still down at 4.81, but you get Pirtle at 5.17. So it's a little bit more flat comparatively on DraftKings. He stands a little taller on FanDuel. RJ, somewhat relevant on FanDuel, much more relevant on DraftKings, 13.2% winner, 10.6% of the top 150. 40 FanDuel points in 34.5 the other night. Emmanuel Quickly did have 52 the other night in 38 minutes. Pirtle put up 51.4 in 29 minutes. So these guys all have capability. There's definitely upside there. And we talked about Gary Trent not really hitting the board all that hard as a odds and ends type play on DraftKings. A little bit more love for him on FanDuel. Nobody else really all that relevant. I think I'll show you guys real quick, just in case there are people out there who like to screenshot it and build with these lineups as a foundation or whatever. I'll show you guys what came up through Ace Mind, but this was run with Levert and Mitchell both in, and it's going to be just a wildly different slate at this point. So we're just going to do this real quick because I do want to punch out and get to those updates. This was the DK board for the Monster 118,000 entry contest. Trey asked about Vince Williams. Yeah, he was looking really terrific, Trey. The four top guys on the entire slate were Jordan Goodwin, Vince Williams, Zaire Williams, and Santi Aldama. Vince, for your DraftKings slate, 45.09% winner, 42% of the top 150, 50% in the top one. You can absolutely play Vince. The one thing that I did throw in there when I was talking about Vince is the comparative nature of his $6,100 salary on DraftKings versus Jordan Goodwin at 47, Zaire Williams at the same positions for 46, and then Santi Aldama for 49. Zaire, since they're both shooting guard small forward, is probably the most relevant price pivot. You save $1,500 if you go down to him. You go from a 45% win rate to a 38.5% win rate, 42.6% exposure in our top 150 in the sim to a 36.6%. So it's a minor sacrifice of some of our sim results to save you $1,500, and then you can spend that $1,500 on an upgrade somewhere else. So it's one to keep in mind, but Vince does look very good despite being the highest priced player on that team today. And you can see him in a number of these lineups. But we've got no Brandon Miller anymore. We've got no Levert anymore. We've got no Donovan Mitchell anymore. You're going to see a fair amount. Tyrese Maxey probably gets replaced in a lot of these almost directly by those Darius Garland shares now. All of the Memphis guys will stay just as relevant as they look right now. Zaire, Vince Williams. We're getting a ton of Zion, as we talked about. Take it or leave it. I struggle with endorsing Zion every time he comes up. Jordan Goodwin, the other one coming out of Memphis, but everybody from Memphis looks pretty relevant. So that's your top on DraftKings. That top lineup against $4, bringing back $250. Not bad. That was Goodwin, Zaire, Mitten, Miles Bridges, who we definitely didn't talk about, but also looks better now with no Brandon Miller, Lamar Stevens, Anthony Simons, Zion Williamson, and Tyrese Halliburton. It's a little odd duck of a lineup, but certainly got you there in the previous sim, and this one is actually still playable. The only real change so far in that one, I mean, outside of the shuffling of how other guys look relative to like an Anthony Simons, let's say. You might want to find a way to like put Garland in that spot, but like Miles Bridges just goes up from where he was here. So that lineup actually potentially looks even better. And then your former FanDuel slate, which is again going to be different, still have late swap on FanDuel. Cunningham looked like the only real relevant piece, I think, from Detroit, Trey, when I was breaking that one down earlier. DraftKings 8.6% winner, 2% of the top 150. We got him less than the public popularity, but if you're going to anybody from Detroit, I think it's probably Cade. Just not a great matchup going up against a pretty good defensive Cleveland team. But yeah, he'd be the guy from Detroit if I'm taking anybody out of that side. FanDuel, you've got a lot of room for Lucas shares. You've obviously got your Goodwin. See how Klay Thompson works out now that we've got more value plays available. Center was interesting on FanDuel. Center was all over the place. Shares of Trey Jemison for very cheap. Draymond, KP, Sabonis. A weird slate. Tons and tons of Zion again. So we're still on theme with Memphis, right? This is remember I said, we had a few more fours Memphis-wise, but 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 2. Memphis is all over this thing. And there's some in this column as well. That's not going to change. They're still going to be key value plays for the slate. We're just getting more playable parts on this one now. All right, 6:05. I'm punching out of here, you guys. Got to get some updates done for this thing. You guys rock. Happy weekend. We made it. Friday night, 6 o'clock Friday night. Luka Doncic playing. All right, good. So we don't have to worry about the ridiculous upgrade for Kyrie. So Kyrie just looks like a throw him into a few lineups type option. Luka was looking pretty good. He was mid-single digits win rate, like 5-6% win rate, but we were getting him in the 12, 13, 15% range in our top 150. So that'll hold up for Luka. Mamba, those guys are like the Memphis guys are like the top 4, 5, 6 owned players, or 4 of the 6 most highly owned players on both sides. They're going to be crazy, crazy popular. All right, yeah, let me punch out. Good luck out there, guys. Enjoy the weekend. We'll be back Monday for whatever that slate looks like. Getting into some baseball over the weekend. Going to try and knock out another fantasy draft or so. Going to start working on getting the backbone updated for the projections board. Get all the season-long projections in line. I like to pull those together, average some of them out, and then make my changes. So got a lot of work to do over the weekend, but you guys absolutely rock. Hit the like button if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle if you're not. And other than that, somebody out there go win something tonight. Good luck, and I will see you tomorrow. Or no, Monday.